But making that connection back home is something that many people in Ireland don't understand because we aren't Irish Americans. We don't understand the draw, the magnetism, the attraction of coming back and the magic of that. Imagine landing in a plane in Dublin and the pilot saying, if it's your first time, welcome home.
That's Máirtín Ó Muilleoir, bridge builder for Belfast and founder of the Belfast International Homecoming. And I'm John Lee, welcoming you to the final installment of Irish Stew Gets Lost in Belfast, made possible by our friends at Tourism Ireland. We find ourselves at the end of our Lost in Belfast road trip, but before we delve into this series-ending episode, focused on the event that lured us to Belfast in the first place, the Belfast International Homecoming, let me share the first word that comes to my mind from our time lost in Belfast. Passion. The passion our guests showed for what they do and for the city they do it in. Could we get more passion than Chef Niall McKenna showed for his city's burgeoning restaurant scene and for the locally sourced produce he serves at Waterman House? You could hear Jerry White's dedication to a vision when he told us about creating his Belfast cut Jawbox Gin through graft and craft. We heard how Belfast's troubled past and more hopeful future came together for hoteliers Andrew and Andrea Kieran when their passion project, Regency House, played host to America's contribution to the peace process in the form of recent guests President Bill Clinton and Senator George Mitchell. And we heard the passion loud and clear in the voice of Suzanne Savage, one stellar indication of why Belfast is a UNESCO City of Music. And that's just naming a few of our guests, who, for all the troubles and all the difficulties of living and growing up in the Belfast of the past, are committed to the Belfast of the future. And no one's more passionate than our next two guests, the people who staged the annual Belfast International Homecoming. Let's start with the return of our one-time Irish Stew guest, former Lord Mayor, publisher, and community builder, Máirtín Ó Muilleoir.
Máirtín, we're talking about the Belfast International Homecoming, and this is really the central thing that drew us to Belfast and built our Belfast road trip around it. Why the homecoming? Why did you feel this idea was what Belfast needed? How did it look at the time you conceived it, and how does it look now?
The most important thing in the world for Irish America and Irish Americans is to make a real, live, physical connection with back home. Some people call it the mother country, some people call it the Emerald Isle, some people know who their people were who maybe left 150 years ago or left 100 years ago, but many people don't. But making that connection back home is something that many people in Ireland don't understand because we aren't Irish Americans. We don't understand the draw, the magnetism, the attraction of coming back and the magic of that. Imagine landing in a plane in Dublin and the pilot saying, if it's your first time, welcome home. That's a sensation and a feeling and an emotion which those of us who are from Belfast can't understand. But in my view, it's a very powerful emotion. And what we have tried to do with the homecoming is to say to Irish America, Belfast is a city transformed, a wounded city. It went through a lot of dark times, not just from 1969 to 1995, but many periods before that. However, it is the most successful peace process in the world. And the peace that we enjoy today, a fragile peace, a challenged peace, but nevertheless a transformational peace, wouldn't have happened without Irish America. So not only if you want to make a connection back to Ireland, but why don't you come to Belfast? Because we would not have the peace we enjoy today without Irish America. So the crowning glory of Irish America is that they managed to engender and give birth to the Irish peace process. And when you think about it, the great hurt, the great cross that Irish America always carried during those terrible years of the 70s, 80s and 90s, up to the mid-90s, was that they were always grieving for the fact that there was a war going on, that there was a conflict going on, that it was very hard on civilians more than anyone else. And I always felt when I spoke to Irish Americans in those years that there was great sadness. So the peace process lifted that pallor that was over Irish America and over Ireland. And the people who made it possible were Irish Americans. And of course, since then, they've helped to build the peace. So we have tried to say to people, come home. You don't need to be from Belfast or have relatives from Belfast, though many people do have. I think of Tommy Allen McLaughlin of the IBO, whose grandfather was from Belfast. I think of Michael Biondo of iHeartMedia, whose mother was born in Belfast, left 70 years ago. So I think of Dennis Daggett, the president of the International Longshoremen's Association, whose people left Belfast in 1860. But that's not what's needed. If you have any Irish roots at all, then come back to the island of Ireland, come back to Ireland, but come to Belfast. Come and see what you have wrought, what you have done, what you have delivered. So that's the genesis. That's the idea.
Máirtín, I'm interested to pursue a little bit further the Americans who now identify with Belfast that never would have before this event. But what about the people you're gathering in the room? You're bringing people in who traditionally, at one point in their history, wouldn't have been sitting down together. They're seeing Americans coming and being interested in Belfast. What is the transformation that's happening in the homecoming hall while people are having a good time? And
we are saying to people, come to Belfast because it is, by a long stretch, the most exciting city in Ireland today. But we're also saying something else, because I remember speaking to the late Máirtín McGuinness, and Máirtín McGuinness was a legendary figure in Irish America who could command large audiences right across this country. And I said to Máirtín, would you attend an event I'm organising in America because you have such a great pool and people want to hear from you? And he said, no, he said, there's one speaker or set of speakers who are even have a much greater attraction than me. And I said, what's that? And he said, myself and the Reverend Ian Paisley together. So we were talking about the Deputy First Minister from Sinn Féin and the First Minister from the DUP, sworn enemies. Both leaders had been in jail in their past, coming together. And what he was saying was that when you put both him and the late Dr. Paisley together, that's the message that Irish Americans wanted to hear. So when we bring people to the homecoming in Belfast in the fall, always make sure that they go to both communities in Belfast, if we can still use that. Sadly, it's not a totally outdated term, that they go to both sides of the peace wall, that they hear different stories and different realities and different truths. And I know we're not allowed to say there are alternative facts, but you will sit down with people in the east of the city, like my dear friend Sammy Douglas, who is a DUP councillor in Belfast, a unionist councillor. And he will give you a different history of Belfast than I will give. But it's hard for me to say all that's untrue or it's rubbish or whatever, because he's speaking from the heart. So it's very important to me when people come to Belfast that they get to see and experience and sit down and break bread with both communities. And then on top of that, it is a truism, John, that the most sustainable relationships between Irish America and Ireland are business relations.
yes, yeah.
So if we can get business people together and they can start doing business together to their mutual benefit, no one being ripped off, we wouldn't like to annoy the president, but it's a win-win. Those are the relationships which can go on forever. For example, City employs 3,200 people in Belfast, and yet its global headquarters is New York. So there's a wonderful relationship that keeps on giving, as it were, gift that keeps on giving. And if we can do that on a smaller basis, such as the Artemis, the company in Belfast, which is making the electric battery ferries, boats, and are now selling them into America, if we could have Artemis selling boats to the Staten Island ferry, that's how we create relationships which really are mutually beneficial and which are sustainable and which go on for a long time.
My observation is a lot of conflict is dressed up under various flags, religion or politics or nationality, but at the core, they're often economic. And so what does bringing in this new business interest do for the economy of Belfast, and how does that impact an ongoing peace process?
You can't have peace without prosperity, and what happened in Belfast has happened in America. The old Rust Belt industries, the shipbuilding has now gone. The light engineering, the people who made looms and for the linen industry around the world, all those businesses were lost. And fortunately, as the peace process took hold in the mid-90s, we had an influx of American investment, much of it influenced by Irish Americans in the boardrooms of big companies. So Allstate of Chicago came in, now employs 2,500 people. Liberty of Boston came in, employing now around 500 people, very important technology jobs in Belfast. And then we have smaller companies like Rapid7 of Boston is 200 people. Chicago Mercantile Exchange has 2,500 people in Belfast. The New York Stock Exchange was in Belfast. Interesting thing about those companies, first of all, they are the jobs of the future. They're digital and software jobs. And I wouldn't say that some of them aren't back office jobs, but the vast majority actually were jobs for really talented software engineers. So we were getting the 21st century jobs. But the other important thing was the American companies wanted to employ in merit. They didn't care if you were black, white, blue, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholic, Protestant. And so they started on a new footing because economic discrimination was very much root cause of some of our problems. So not only do we have these world-class American companies coming in, giving jobs to young people who can then stay there and raise families there, but we also had a new dynamic where they were saying that we just want to employ the best people. So that has been transformational, and it's being challenged now because we were about to get another investment in Belfast from New York, and I know it's been put on hold because they are afraid of being accused of putting jobs outside of America. But I think that will settle down, and we now need, as we enter a new phase in Belfast, we need Indigenous entrepreneurs who can sell products to America or who can place factories here to build the jobs of the future. So we have this really adult relationship of mutual benefit between our peoples.
Also, the Belfast International Homecoming is a heck of a lot of fun. It's a great night out. You make great business connections, as been mentioned in earlier episodes. The homecoming has come up in many episodes we've had during our Irish Stew Gets Lost in Belfast road trip. It's such an important bridge that you've built. There's another bridge that you built to New York that's coming up on the calendar. Why don't you give us a brief take on that, and just in case there's any spare seats left by the time this episode airs?
There'll always be spare seats to the New York, New Belfast conference, but just to say, when we do these annual conferences, we always sit down and say, how can we make it better? Or how can we achieve something never achieved before? And last year at the homecoming in Belfast, we had the germ of an idea that the International Longshoremen's Association would support a youth club in the west of Belfast. And amazingly, we're close to raising $600,000 for that youth club, which will be handed over at the International Homecoming in Belfast on the 25th of September. And that happens, and they have $525,000 raised, including $25,000, which was chipped in at a dinner I was at last night. And that happens, that'll be one of the single biggest ever contributions from Irish America to Belfast in 40 or 50 years. The New York, New Belfast conference is a way of priming the pump of bringing people into an event in New York and New York Athletic Club to meet people from Belfast, dynamic people, welcoming people, action people, people who really want to get things done. And at New York, New Belfast, we always think it's a sister event of the International Homecoming. So on the 12th of June this year, we will have bringing over some of our most dynamic entrepreneurs from Belfast under a theme called Meet the Belfast Makers. And we'll also be hearing from that great hero of the Irish peace process, Tom Dennehy. That's not the most Irish surname you've ever heard, but he, for 15 years, has been investing in startups from the New York State Retirees Fund in a significant manner to create jobs back at home in the north of Ireland. So we'll bring Belfast and New York together in New York. And part of that is sowing the seed of saying to people, okay, now you've heard about it, but you got to come see for yourself. And that's why when I'm in New York today, we're meeting our honorary chairs. We're very blessed and fortunate to have such a dynamic and active group of honorary chairs who are engaged in the event, including yourself, John. So thank you to all those honorary chairs.
One last question. What's the impact over the years of the homecoming? Belfast probably had gotten fairly insular. It wasn't a place people were traveling to, and it wasn't a place businesses were investing in. And then Belfast people start finding themselves in a big event full of Americans interested in what's going on. What does that do for the Belfast leaders that you attract when they start rubbing shoulders with Americans and finding their interest in their city.
It's such a culture shock because Americans start meetings on time, and that is unknown in Belfast. And of course, Americans always speak up and speak loud. It's been a great learning process here. And Americans just want to say, how can they help? The door is always open. They can't do everything you want, but the door's open. So instead of knocking on closed doors, when you come to Irish America, the door's open and they'll certainly listen to and see, can they be of help? But for me in Belfast, as we build this brighter future, any outside international attention, especially from America, has been to the benefit of the city. It has moved us to the bright side of the road. So we were world experts at looking back and looking inwards, and now looking outwards, looking to the future, letting in the light, engaging with international audiences. That has been to our benefit. It will continue to be to our benefit.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate all of your support and help. It's great to get another chance to talk with you.
Thank you, John.
And while we were in the Great Hall of the Titanic Hotel, the actual drafting room where the plans for the Titanic were drawn up, in that great crowd full of excited people, we managed to pull a few guests aside to get their quick reaction on the Belfast International Homecoming, starting with Dan Dennehy. He was over from New York as the Vice President of the Council for American-Irish Relations.
This is the first time for the homecoming. I've watched it on video, and we've been to every event that we could be with Máirtín because, honestly, they know how to throw a good party. Currently, I'm here as Vice President of the Council for American-Irish Relations, and we have 3 New York City Council members and Congressman Tim Kennedy, and we brought them down to Dublin. They met an array of people from the State Department and various parts of government, and again, up here.
We talked to Bryan O'Dwyer, well-known Irish-American in New York circles, an attorney with a long history of working to advance Ireland's cause in the United States.
Well, there's no question about it. Every single day, as the troubles are behind us, the political situation has gotten more stable. Every single day, there's going to be more tourism, more investment, more employment, a better Belfast. And this is the beginning of an example of how that is working. People from all over the world are here, understanding that the future is Belfast. Well, it's a good place to have a good time. It's a good place to make money. It's a good place for everything. This is turning out to be the safest city in Europe, the best city in Europe, and people are flocking here. I was just speaking at Queen's University. Half the students in the class I was addressing were international students. That wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. It's an absolutely incredible transformation. A magical transformation, and tonight's recognition of that.
And then we talked to our friend Maura, Clare, a past guest on Irish Stew, the creator of Smuggling Poitín, which is distilled in Northern Ireland and named to be a Belfast Homecoming Ambassador.
Oh, it's just amazing. I've been visiting here on average once a year for 25 years. And every single time I come back here and marvel at how it's blossoming, there's just been this wonderful energy that continues to expand here year after year.
Well, those were just 3 of hundreds of guests in the hall that night. And I guess that could represent hundreds of problems for the event organizer, who on a regular basis managed to work out all these problems and keep the ship afloat in this case. And that would be Connla McCann, the co-founder and director of the event organizer, Ashling Events. Welcome, Connla.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Good to reconnect online and to get back into some of the things we encountered at the Belfast Homecoming. You're the co-founder and director of Ashling Events. This is not the only event you put on a year. Roughly how many events do you have your hands in, both in Ireland and over here?
I think it's between 8 or 9, depending on what mad plans we have. We have some repeats that have been going for a number of years, and then every so often we'll throw in a random brand new event and try it out.
Is the Belfast International Homecoming, that international aspect, is there a level of complexity to this event that surpasses the other events?
I think it's the challenging part of it is that you've really got to sell it in that we have to make it worthwhile and enticing enough for people to come all the way from, be it Australia or California, New York, to say, come to Belfast, we'll show you a good time, we'll roll out the red carpet, but making sure that it is a worthwhile trip overall in terms of connections that they may make, so that when they go home that something has come out of the trip. And so I suppose that's the most challenging thing. And luckily, every year we've been able to do it and get a really great cohort or grouping each year, different each year as well, to come to Belfast and to invest 3, sometimes more, 4 or 5 days of their time to come in and be with us and make our event special.
You've lured me over there twice. I'm proud to say I am a Belfast Homecoming Ambassador. And then Martin and I returned for a great visit at the event at the Titanic Hotel. Let's talk a little bit more about the purpose of the event. I'm looking at your website and describes it as an annual event to meet the peacemakers, bridge builders, and change makers building a better Belfast. And Connla, on the screen, I look behind you and I see Martin Luther King Jr., a portrait of him. And I see I'm going to forget their names right now, but the black athletes in the Mexico City Olympics who raised their fists in protest to draw attention to their cause and to the universal cause of justice and equality. So that seems to capture a strong vibe that we feel when we go to the Belfast Homecoming. It's about business, but it has a deeper purpose.
Yeah, most definitely. And we're very proud of the peace process here and what's been achieved. And actually, in our office, there's even more portraits of Martin McGuinness and Ian Paisley. But the peace process is very important to us. And it's very important for us that not just in the homecoming, but in all of our events that we do, especially the ones connected with North America, that the peace process is celebrated at them. So, for example, we'll be talking about the investment that has come post-peace process from the likes of Comptroller Tom DiNapoli. So, yeah, you will find positive messaging about the peace process throughout all of our events, especially the homecoming. And when people do make the effort to come to Belfast, it is important for us to show them our city, our new city, and all of the communities in our city. So on the programme that we'll have outside of the main event, which is the banquet where we present the medals, we'll bring delegates to the Skeena Centre at the heart of East Belfast, where they'll meet key community workers and politicians working within those communities.
When you say East Belfast, which communities are you talking about there?
For example, you would meet Linda Irvine, who is the driving force of the Irish language in the Unionist Protestant community in East Belfast. Linda has done unbelievable work to send out the message and to demonstrate that the Irish language is for everybody. It's not just for nationalists or Catholics, and she has broke amazing ground and she has done amazing things to do that over the years. There's now the first ever Irish language primary school, nursery school in East Belfast, and that's all thanks to the work that Linda Irvine does. And then on the other side, we will bring the delegates to key community groups in West Belfast, such as RSC Connla, which is the new James Connolly Centre, and you have Fáilte First here, the West Belfast tourism body led by Harry Connolly and his team in the RS, who will be welcoming guests in. They'll get the tour, they'll learn some stuff about James Connolly that perhaps they didn't know. So in both visits, delegates will learn a lot and get a feel of the good, positive work that's going on across the city and in all of our communities.
Connla, I was watching a Netflix series recently called The Residents. It centers on the setting up of a state dinner at the White House for visiting Australian Prime Minister. And a big kind of subtext is organizing the seating chart for such a high pressure event. And I imagine putting together the seating chart for the Belfast International Homecoming and keeping everybody happy is quite a challenge.
So I think when it comes to the seating, what we're trying to do is make sure we seat people together who will have a good synergy or who are bound to make connections or who are about to click. And actually, that's probably one of the more enjoyable jobs. I think in the series you were talking about, my son watched it, and I remember seeing that bit. But no, what's behind everything is making connections and helping people to make connections. So what we really try to do is put people with people who will click and who will bond, and potentially then something will come out of it.
What are some of the headaches and disasters or things you have to manage right there the day of the event? It's a massive event. This one was in the big former drafting hall of the Titanic Hotel, a beautiful space, big room full of people. And then you have a couple of podcasters who show up and can't find their seats. And then later on, they need a ride to the Dunkerque and all this sort of thing. How do you deal with those on the moment little crises that come up?
Our sort of philosophy is that if anybody needs anything, we never say no. So somebody needs a lift, we'll get you a lift. If somebody needs to sit somewhere else, we'll sort that out too. Yes, you do come across sometimes, especially if maybe there's a large delegation, maybe from the New York State legislatures, maybe, and they didn't realize there was a seating plan. Yes, they'll sit somewhere and it happens to be a VIP seat at the top table, but I think you just got to deal with it on the spot. And another thing we often say at Icing events is no problems, only solutions.
I've been twice, and I've been with all the people who go to the homecoming, and everybody has a buzz and they're glowing afterwards and they had a great time. But those are the kind of the international, the blow-ins show up for a few days and they learn about Belfast. They bring the message back. What about the people in Belfast, the citizens, the business people, the community leaders that attract? What do you see happening there? Business connections, community bridges? How does the event received in Belfast?
So it's received very well, and you can see that in the partnerships that we have here in Belfast with the likes of Northern Irish Connections, Deloitte. We've had Artemis in the past, the Titanic Quarter Group. We've had Belfast Harbour. So there are a lot of organisations that want to be involved because they see the merit in being at the banquet, meeting people in person, and people knowing that they're there at what it is that they do. If you think about it, we're doing the hard work getting people to come to Belfast, and that's good because all the likes of those partners don't have to leave the city to go and meet these key people that we are bringing in. So here they are right on your doorstep. We're going to have a main event and some fringe events. Be there, be part of it. And the Belfast Homecoming is open to all who would like to attend. And if you need to be there, we'll get you in. But if we're bringing a strong cohort of business, community leaders, maritime leaders, people from all different sectors into Belfast, people see the importance of that and the importance of having to be there.
We saw evidence of just straight out business connections that are being made at the homecoming. The next day, we were down at the Hinch Distillery and we saw Dr. Terry Cross. And he just started saying, I've been looking for a distributor. And he just said, within minutes, I sorted it out at the homecoming. I met somebody who could help me out. We started talking, problem solved, moving along. A pretty valuable night out just on that level.
And I think I remember as well at last year's homecoming, Terry has these special casks, and Steve Lennox had been over with a massive delegation of firefighters, and he came out to me and he said, "Where's the whiskey guy? This guy wants one of the casks." We also had a Belfast artist in the room last year, Anna McKeever, and we showcased one of her Belfast pieces. And again, all her pieces are done with the diaspora in mind. And off the back of the banquet last year, Anna got a commission for the Khalidi Castle group. So that was good as well. So there was some whiskey sold, there was some art sold, there was a bit of everything sold.
I met people in Belfast when I was over there pre-pandemic for the getting the bling around my neck that makes me a Belfast ambassador, which unfortunately did not get me any free drinks that night in town. I thought the medal would be my ticket to a free night. But I kept in touch with people I met then, and one of the folks I had met many years ago was Michael Stewart, who's now the night czar, and he was tremendously helpful. And he just dug in and helped us organize the trip as a volunteer consultant. So several of our interviews were set up courtesy of Michael Stewart, including the Waterman House, which was where we met again, and which was our first stop of our Belfast road trip. Well, let's look ahead to the near future. There's other events on your calendar, and I know too many to go into at this point, but you're all over the world building bridges to the Silicon Valley, to Boston. But there's one coming up actually in a few days from when this episode is released that I've also been involved with over the years, New York, New Belfast. And if it ties into the homecoming very nicely, but tell us what's coming up in that event, and can people still go to it here in New York City?
Sure, yes, people can still go. We'll have about 160, 170 people in the New York Athletics Club. So if my math is correct, I think this is the 16th, possibly the 17th annual New York, New Belfast. And we've changed it up this year. For years we're talking about FDIs that have come to Belfast or investing in Belfast, and they're great advocates and great ambassadors for the city about how good it is to do business in the city. But this year we've changed it up in that what we're showcasing this year are actually the companies in Belfast who have created new technology, their own technology. They're creating their own products and they're selling them globally. So we've called it Meet the Makers. And with our partners, KPMG and Invest NI and Belfast City Council, have a panel showcasing Halos body cams, Team FeePay, Cerdan and Options Technology. All great shining examples of new businesses that are scaling, growing on a global level, and all coming out of Belfast. And they'll be with us in person and they'll be on the stage. You want to hear more about them, ask them some questions, meet them, you can come along to the banquet. We will still be talking about businesses, attracting businesses to Belfast on that FDI level, but this is a new theme that we've introduced this year. We're really excited about it because it's fresh and it's different from what we've done before. And then with our partners from Tourism Ireland and with our honorary chair, Maura Kelly, we're going to be showing off another maker from Belfast in the tourism sector, Phil Irvine, and he's going to be talking about how they use food and drink to promote Belfast and the success of all the different tours that they've put together, all based around gin, whiskey, Belfast food. Their business is flying. They're actually expanding out to Edinburgh now, and his story is going to be really interesting to hear as well.
We had a great feel for the food and drink scene in Belfast and the passion that the Belfast food and drinks makers have. Yeah. We were very impressed. So again, what's the date and where is it and when is it?
So it's the New York Athletics Club. It's June 12th. Doors open at 11 a.m. And we'll be finished around 2:33. And then for any of the delegates that have the time to stay with us for the rest of the day, we're going to jump on the subway and head down to the world famous Marcus Robinson studio at the World Trade Center. Marcus is going to be hosting us. I was just quickly talking to him before I come on this call. He's going to have the champagne chilling and the water chilling. I'm sure it'll be a hot day for all of us to come and see his artwork and the absolutely unbelievable views from his studio downtown. So we'll have a couple of hours with Marcus, and then just to wrap things up and to say farewell, we'll have a finale in the one and only Dead Rabbit. Can't go to New York now without going to the Dead Rabbit. So Geraldine Hughes' team will be hosting us there, and we'll have a little drink to say goodbye.
Excellent. Full day. And then just one last plug for you, Connla, because in a way, this event, the New York New Belfast, does serve to draw attention to the Belfast Homecoming as well. When is the Belfast Homecoming? It'll be the 12th year, I believe, this year.
Yep. So it's the main event. The big banquet is the 25th of September in the beautiful Titanic Hotel. And we're starting to work now with our honorary chairs and partners, and we're going to have some fringe events around that, depending on what people want to go to. We're looking forward to that, working on the delegation that's coming in from all around. But as you say, throughout the year, we have several other events in the States, and they all feed into the homecoming. Even our Boston event, the Alabama one, and we're just back from San Francisco, where we were out with Mike Hurst, who was one of our honorees last year. So yeah, all of the events that we do throughout the year in the US all feed into the Belfast Homecoming.
Connla, we didn't have an opportunity to really delve into your life. We'll save that for another chapter. We look forward to seeing you at New York, New Belfast coming up this week, and maybe we can figure out a way to get back to the homecoming in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And the door's always open in Belfast.
Well, Martin Nutty and I, we offer our massive thanks to Tourism Ireland for all they did to make our Lost in Belfast series possible, including introducing us to Northern Ireland's tour guide to the stars, Dee Morgan of Dee Tours, to the hospitable folks at the Grand Central Hotel, and to Aer Lingus for getting us from here to there and back. See all that Ireland has to offer at Ireland.com, and while you're there, sign up for Ireland in your inbox to get travel news and insider tips by email. And with this episode, we welcome Irish Central as our media partner. Global Ireland's leading website will be including our podcast regularly, and will be one more place you can listen to Irish Stew. So stay tuned to Irish Stew on Irish Central.
Irish Stew is produced by John Lee, Martin Nutty, and Bill Schultz. Editing, mixing, and mastering by Bill Schultz. Music on Irish Stew was composed and performed by Rosa Nutty, with Donald Bowens on drums, Cathal O'Riordan on bass and synthesizer. For more on Rosa Nutty's music, please visit rosanutty.com.